All right, here we are, the prelude of my book, part 4, Essential Structure for Eco-literate Music Pedagogy. Previously, I theorized eco-literate music pedagogy. 1. Connecting to local places. 2. Experiencing music and nature in connected, meaningful, and ethical ways. 3. Developing ecological consciousness by ritualizing and creating music rooted in soil. And 4. Connecting to the planet more broadly by connecting local understandings to global ecological crises. Eco-literate music pedagogy begins with helping students become conscious of local places. This is no small task for people focused on computer and cell phone screens, because music is a way humans come to understand the world around them through sound and other senses. The sonic experiences of ecological consciousness are a fundamental aspect of eco-literate music pedagogy. Drawing on Coleman and Schaefer, music teachers and students study the musics that surround them. This leads to teachers and students living well in place, connected to the health of local environments and dedicated to protecting those places. Music teachers and students can be inspired by the music of non-human life to create music for performance. These can provide an opportunity for pleasure and a more scientific understanding of these places, what non-human animals music in these places, and then can be connected to broader theories such as climate change, waste, soil use, transportation, suburbanization, the understanding of which typifies an ecologically literate citizen. And here's a figure I created called the essential structure of eco-literate music pedagogy. As you can see, I structured like a tree with roots and trunk and leaves and fruit and weather and soil. The soil being stability and soundness. The roots being things like soundscape, local musicians, family stories, local foods, cultural history, and geologic history. The trunk being literacy, ecological, and consciousness, leading up to the fruits, such as policy, conservation, sustainability, activism, and spirituality. And then some of the clouds being anthropocentrism, climate change, alienation, the sixth extinction, injustice, waste, soil loss, transience, and water pollution. And that isn't a full list, but it's a good list, right? Of things, the type of things that would be within this structure. Okay, next section. Reflecting with purpose. The purpose of this self-study is to explore the theory underlying eco-literate music pedagogy in juxtaposition with personal experience of the author, a music teacher in acting this pedagogy. According to Catholic eco-theologian Thomas Berry, ecological devastation is primarily caused by, quote, a mode of consciousness that establishes a radical discontinuity between the human and other modes of being and the bestowal of all rights to humans, end quote. To understand my consciousness, this book utilizes reflective self-study as I try to expand my conception of modes of being and of rights. The philosophy autoethnography represents my evolution as a music teacher and, in turn, modifies theory with practice. Next section, reflective writing in environmentalism. Reflective writing dominates the environmental literature. Thoreau provided the model for much of this writing. Books such as Walden and essays such as Walking characterize self-reflective writing that moves theory. Thoreau's writing pushes Emerson's transcendental philosophy towards the biocentric, placing humankind in nature rather than above it. Titan discusses Thoreau's movement away from transcendentalism and toward more scientific and experiential philosophy. Quote, his thinking gradually moved away from spiritual correspondences and towards scientific truth, experienced as patterns in nature, unusually oriented to sensory experience. Listening became an important means towards this knowledge, end quote. In Walden, Thoreau wrote a chapter on sounds, which can be seen as a basis for sound studies, soundscape ecology, ecomusicology, and eco-literate music pedagogy. Notable reflective writing includes the work of Sierra Club founder John Muir, who lived from 1838 to 1914, the environmental advocate Edward Abbey, who lived from 1927 to 1989. John Muir's journals provide insight into the mind of the conservationists' camping trips with President Theodore Roosevelt, the discovery of Glacier Bay, and his insight into American philosopher Emerson. Abbey, like Pollan a decade later, Michael Pollan, begins his reflective insights with a critique of Thoreau, critiquing his mystical incoherence and his timidity. Ultimately, Thoreau needs to be approached, quote, "I look for his name in the water, his face in the airy foam. He must be here. Wherever there are deer and hawks, wherever there is liberty and danger, wherever there is wilderness, wherever there is a living river, Henry Thoreau will find his eternal home." End quote. This type of writing seems praxial, understanding theory through actual experience. More recent reflective writing has considered such topics as gardening and farming, beekeeping, and living without money. Even when no explicit theory is drawn, this body of writing puts forth a variety of theories. Many writers use Wendell Berry's essays to develop agrarian theory, including in music education, with Vincent Bates. The message underlying Sundine's narrative is that living simply can lead to living better. Barbara Kingsolver, promotes the importance of locavorism, living and growing food locally. Bill McKibben tells us his story during a time when he was shifting roles from environmental writer to activist, while at the same time purchasing a plot of land and learning about beekeeping. The message centers on the importance of global action, acting to change government policy, while connecting to a local place, concurring with the current concept of wilderness and gardening. Autoethnographies in music education. The first autoethnography I read was Nate Cruzy's 2012 outlining of his attempts to learn mandolin online. Caught up in this story of using only online resources, an act that deeply challenges institutional music education, he described not only successes, but also frustrations and challenges. Autoethnography can be about sharing vulnerability. Cruz's research set me on a course to question the possibilities, roles, and means of scholarship in music education. My own autoethnographic research was, following Cruzy's model, an analysis of my praxis. Later, I began to realize the more evocative possibilities of autoethnography, such as proposed by Bartley and Ellis, Denzin, Ellis, and Gozoisis. Though I have strived for a balance between analysis and expressiveness, which leads me to philosophy autoethnography. Music education has seen a sharp increase in autoethnography. These studies have been published in many peer-reviewed publications, including Action, Criticism, and Theory for Music Education, British Journal for Music Education, Bulletin of the Council for Research in Music Education, International Journal for Education in the Arts, Journal of Music, Technology, and Education, Journal of Research in Music Education, Music Education Research, Qualitative Report, and Research Studies in Music Education. And obviously, since 2017, right, when this is published, a lot more. 2016 is the most recent publication. Okay. Music education autoethnographies have been used to passionately explore issues of gender, race, class, and emotional pain, to analyze storytelling itself, to interpretively explore creative pedagogy, to expand the cultural dimensions of music education, and to challenge current teaching practices. These autoethnographies accomplished many purposes and, importantly to this book, describe and challenge theory. Bates' work uses rural theory, Lamb's feminism, and Mind, Freirean, and Illichian theory. Autoethnography can be seen as an important part of a new ethos in music education research: ethical, spiritual, and heartful, uncontrolled, rebellious, and gloriously perfect imperfection. Autoethnographies can be, in contrast, analytic and focused on developing and challenging social theory. In the current book, I hope to balance some of the more analytical elements of autoethnography, such as exploring the possibilities of a new pedagogical model, with some of the more ethical. The ecological crises are deeply ethical concerns. Spiritual. I recommend eco-literate music pedagogy as a spiritual praxis. And heartful. Developing a new philosophy and practice is an emotional endeavor to which I lend my full self, including my professional reputation. I call this balancing act of rugged interpretation, pliable heartfulness, and theory building philosophy autoethnography. Last section, philosophy autoethnography. So this is the method. As an autobiographical research method, autoethnography is typified by the use of insider knowledge, nuance, and accessible prose. Autoethnography has emerged as an important qualitative research methodology compatible with our current concern for identity politics. Autoethnography aims for triadic balance between self, auto, culture, ethno, and research, graphy. Accordingly, a quote from Chang here, autoethnographers hope to gain cultural understanding of the self and others directly and indirectly connected to the self, end quote. Music teaching institutions provide one culture in this analysis, but other cultures, such as family and non-human species cultures, emerge as essential. In autoethnographic tradition, Ellis promotes the author writes in the first person, becoming a storyteller. This is consistent with how I understand good writing, which doesn't hide the actor. The reader can easily identify a sentence structure to identify who did what. And in the current book, I have chosen to utilize the ethnographic eye extensively. Structured as memoirs, autoethnographies utilize the conventions of storytelling. Denzin identifies these conventions, quote, people depicted as characters, a scene, a place, a context where a story occurs, an epiphany or crisis that provides dramatic tension, a temporal order of events, and a point or moral of the story, end quote. As an example of how these conventions have guided this book, my epiphany occurred after completing my dissertation, where I longed to find coherence between my experiences with nature, music, and pedagogy. However, because this philosophy autoethnography represents a combination of philosophy and autoethnography, the memoir aspects are divided with more theoretical writing. While a memoir may allude to philosophical truth, the aim of philosophy is to make those explicit. In my research, the present study is my third using autoethnography. I concluded, because autoethnography's subjective nature, it is well suited for exploring theoretical concepts that might be difficult to quantify. Eco-literate music pedagogy is rooted in the body of theory-driven, self-reflective research, which I am labeling philosophy autoethnography. Philosophy autoethnography is a subgenre of autoethnography that embraces the evocative nature of autoethnography and makes explicit and builds theory. Data analyzed for this philosophy autoethnography were collected from February 2015 through September 2016, 1 year and 7 months, and include reflections kept in a journal of my teaching and student assignments. Teaching experiences include 2 youth summer choir camps and 2 semesters, 4 sections, teaching approximately 30 students each, of Teaching Music 5, Introduction to Western Music at Penn State Altoona. These reflections were done as soon after teaching as possible to help ensure accuracy. The choir camp listened to nature at a park and co-composed music with voices and natural found sounds. The Introduction to Western Music assignments included a written listening response to Hunter Hensley's Requiem for the Mountains, which features Gregorian chant with images of the ecological damage to Kentucky mountains due to mountaintop removal mining, a reflection comparing Hensley's Requiem with Mike Townsend's They Call It Progress, a folk song that deals with the same topic, and a sound ecology reflection on the sounds of nature as if they were an intended musical composition, using music elements such as rhythm, pitch, and melody to identify instruments used, such as ducks, winds, and construction equipment, and various additional listening and discussions around nature and music. These data were constructed into various stories which became a base unit of analysis for writing the memoir aspects of this philosophy autoethnography. Data analysis is presented as reflections, reconstructing actual experiences, and creative vignettes, constructing fictional experiences to elucidate a truth or possible future possibility for eco-literate music pedagogy. Each chapter is ended with a poem, an artistic representation of analysis, following the lead of many autoethnographies. These analyses are divided into theoretical writing, insight drawn from other scholars, and arguments I construct. In Chapter 1, Philosophy on Soil, Ivan Illich, Place-Based Education, and a Theory of the Commons provide a pedagogical foundation for ethical action in place. A music education on soil is advanced. Eco-literate music pedagogy is framed as interdisciplinary in Chapter 2, Ecological Literacy. In Chapter 3, Ecomusicology, a subfield of both musicology and ethnomusicology, is described. In ecomusicology, the environment is portrayed as essential to understanding music. Environments inspire music compositions, and environmentalists use music for their activism. Expanding the concept of music education on soil, Chapter 4, Deep Ecology, draws from the Deep Ecology platform to frame an ecocentric valuing of non-human musicking. Music education on soil as a deep ecology leads to the premise of a praxial spirituality of eco-literate music pedagogy. In Chapter 5, Spiritual Praxis, Living the Good Life involves an expanded understanding of self, living for all our kin, human, non-human, and place. And finally, I end the prelude with a poem. Mysteries pondered in a garden. Agony, the garden. Work cut from life. Cynicism's burden. Walking, listening, wildlife. Valuing on soil. Scourging the pillar. Aching of rebirth. Cocooned caterpillar. Vigor in earth, disentangling weeds. Crowning with thorns, self-taunting thoughts. Excesses are shorn. A seed. A fresh plot. Harking bird songs. Carrying the cross. Setting pen to paper. A plot becomes acres. Pondering ground. Crucifixion and death. Completion and joy. Ecological breath. Detested. Enjoyed. Fulfilled and organic.